Good morning.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great. Am I coming through okay? Do I have any feedback or anything?
Hardly any feedback.
What does that mean, hardly any feedback? Is there an echo?
You sound good. No, you sound good.
Oh.
You have like a slight, maybe a second delay, but that's about it.
Oh, okay. Hold on 1 second, okay?
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to our favorite part of the week. It's time to listen to Sounds of Health, where we share the stories, people, and resources that help others to improve their physical, emotional, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Dave MacNiven, and today I'm excited to welcome our guest, Ed Knight. Ed is the owner and founder of Transferance, a new administrative service that handles the red tape involved during the loss of a loved one. Ed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, David. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story and all about Transferance.
Definitely.
So we usually like to get started with an icebreaker question here to kind of warm things up. And that question for you is, what makes you happiest these days?
What really gives me a thrill is that I finally took this company and actually created it and really dove in. I always had it on the back burner. I was always working in corporate America, but now that I actually have this company in the public, working with people, helping them get through a lot of tough situations when it deals with administrative red tape, that really gives me a thrill, gives me a real feeling of fulfillment, helping these families and individuals get through a pretty tough time in their life.
Of course. So this new endeavor that you have, that's what's making you happiest, huh?
Correct. Yes. I always thought about it, and I finally said, "Let me throw my hat into the ring." You're not getting any younger, so you got to pull the trigger at one point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're all going in the other direction, right? We get older, we don't get younger. So that's great. I mean, there's nothing like starting your own business and all of the things that come along with that. So we know kind of where you are now. We're going to talk all about Transferance and all these incredible resources and things that you have to offer people. But can you tell me about, how you started out? Where are you from originally and what brought you to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So, I was a financial advisor back in the day from 2008, Series 7 license, sat with families at the kitchen table, did a lot of wealth planning, transitioned into a support role at one point during my financial advisor career into a senior relationship manager, worked at Fidelity Investments for about a decade. So that's kind of the history of where I came from. But when I was at Fidelity, I kept noticing a lot of clients would physically walk into the Fidelity office, with a folder, and they would kind of drop it on the counter, and a spouse would be there, a wife, and she would say, my husband died. What am I supposed to do with this? We'd open the folder and there's statements from Fidelity, JP Morgan, Scottrade, TD Ameritrade, all these brokers, all these firms, all these banks. So we would explain to the, individual, hey, we're going to handle your Fidelity stuff, but, you got to call these other institutions. You got to remove the husband's name from the accounts. You got to open up inherited IRAs, a lot of paperwork, a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
And there was always a stress level. It's a high stress level for these people. I don't know how to do this. How do I go about doing this? Can you guys help me with these other accounts? And, we'd say, we'll help you with Fidelity, but we're not going to help you with the competition. Oh, do I need my attorney? So, I kept noticing this and I was like, this is all administrative red tape headache work. And I don't think it's fair for them to call an attorney or even a paralegal who charge $200 to $300 to $500 and do this administrative work. So I said, I think there's a service here. And that's when Transferance kind of came into being. And that's where I focus solely on the administrative red tape that, overwhelms a lot of people after a life event such as a death. And that's what I try to focus on. And that's what I'm tackling.
That's great. It seems to fit with the theme of what we've seen with this podcast as we're bringing on entrepreneurs and business owners, how they kind of identify an issue and then they create a business around solving it. So that's really awesome. Before you were a financial advisor, what brought you into that field? What kind of got you there?
Yeah, before 2008, oddly, I was dabbling in the world of IT support and stuff. I don't know if you remember back in the day when 1999 was turning into 2000 and all the world computers were going to blow up because of that transition.
Yeah.
I just kind of got sucked into that world based on job opportunity. And, I was never an IT person. I never studied technology. So I wanted to get into a field that I knew I would enjoy. I love the markets. I love financial planning. And I said, let me make that transition around 2008, of which, the entire economy was about to implode also back then.
Yeah,
so
your timing is impeccable.
Yeah, it was an interesting time to get involved. And I loved it. I did love it. And it was a fully commissioned job. And the kicker is that my first daughter was born and daycare kicked in. And daycare was like $400 a week, literally. And I was working on full commission. I said, how do I keep this? How do I keep my licenses, stay in wealth management? And that's when I transitioned to senior relationship manager, went to Fidelity, and then the rest is history.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's all about trying to figure out how these things fit into your life and what you need to support your family and do all of the things that you're hoping to do, correct?
Exactly. A constant state of pivoting here and there, move forward, pivot, move forward. You know how it works.
Yeah, totally. Now, you and I met just through a chamber event, I believe, right? Did we connect at
Correct.
one of those?
Yeah, I think I visited your chamber there.
And you had just started Transferance at that time, right? So how long have you been around with this company?
The company was probably conceived about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But I went all in about a year ago. That's meaning I left my full-time job, talked to the wife. She still works full-time, thankfully. Yeah. And I said, hey, I'm rolling the dice on this now. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. I think this is a needed service. So I said, I'm all in now. So I've been all in as of, August of last year. So 1 year all in. That's
great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, I think anybody listening to this can understand that, when we lose a loved one, it's a time of really heightened emotions, and there's so much that you're dealing with. So in addition to all of that, the red tape that you have to go through is really difficult, especially when maybe you're not really thinking clearly enough to do all of those things that have to do. So I'm assuming that's kind of what you saw with some of these people that were coming into the office.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you some real life examples. Husband dies, wife comes in. Husband was an investor. He had a lot of accounts. He had a lot of brokerage accounts. Had a lot of relationships, and she was joint owner of these accounts. Yeah. But she just didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? And what it really comes down to is you got to literally get the death certificate of the husband. You got to send it to the firm. You got to sign a couple forms. You got to remove his name from the account. You got to take a joint account, make it into an individual account, and then all is good. That sounds sort of simple, but every firm has their own processes, their own ways of doing it, even though it's the same result. And a lot of people kind of get stuck. They get overwhelmed. They're too busy with life. They don't know where to go. Like I said, I keep saying they lean towards their attorneys, and the attorneys will help. But, after they get their first invoice from the attorneys, then it's a shock. Right. Of, hey, you're helping me fill out paperwork and I got to pay you $3,000. So I figured if I can find a niche into that group that really needs this help, charge a lot less than the attorneys, I think I really can make a difference going forward.
So when you get involved with a client, are you coordinating with their attorney, with the other people that they have?
If it depends. Usually, I will basically have a free consultation just to see if I can do something. First and foremost. Once I sort of flag 2 or 3 or 4 scenarios where I know I can help, I'm really not involving the attorney at all, because if it's an attorney situation, it's a legal situation, and they need to speak to them. I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to get involved with that. I'm going to pull out and flag all the administrative stuff. Hey, we need to get the death certificate to this group. We need to get a medallion stamp for this form. We need to get a notary for this. We need to do this for that. We got to sign these forms. We got to send it here. This needs to be overnighted. We got to call the customer service. We got to wait online for 20 minutes. It's all those like annoying, almost, monotonous processes that you kind of have to go through to kind of get this stuff pushed through. And, when I work with these people, I have them on the phone. They basically will call, hypothetically, Scottrade, and which I don't think is in business anymore. But, I'll call them with them. They'll tell the customer service I'm with a consultant. They're helping me. They're allowed to speak for me. And then I'll start talking the lingo. What do we need to do? How do we get this done? Where do you need this sent? How do you do this electronically? What do we need to do to set up the estate account? What forms do you need for this? So I know the lingo. I know the processes, where some people just have to kind of learn everything on the go.
Yeah.
And it's a headache. It's
I'm
a real
sure.
headache, especially if they have a full-time job, they got kids, they're caring for another adult. So that's the kind of group I'm trying to help, is those overwhelmed people that just, I know they can get through these steps, and I can charge them a reasonable fee to get through this whole process. Is kind of how my business model works.
Gotcha. And right now it's just you with Transference?
It is just me right now. I mean,
Okay.
I'm on that teeter, kind of on that point where I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to be needing some assistance soon.
That's great.
But at the moment, I got my head above water. I'm able to tackle everything. I hope I get overwhelmed with work where I have to, turn the page. That would be a good thing.
Yeah. So the services you're providing, are they always around the loss of a loved one, or are there other times that people would need to reach out to you?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, when I started the whole business model, I was like, hey, this is a reactive sort of business. Something, if someone dies, everyone's reacting. I kind of come in, save the day.
Right.
But then, as I started doing seminars and talking to people started raising their hands. They're like, how do I prevent getting into that mess? And I'm like, hey, that's a very good point. So, in the beginning point, I was like, hey, there's the reactive side to this, and there's also the proactive side. So a lot of individuals, I've sat down with couples, I'm like, all right, let's sit down and figure out, before the life event like a death happens, where is everything? Yeah. Do you know where the accounts are? Do you know what the account numbers are? Safety deposit box key. Do you know how to log into the other spouse's phone? All those little nuances that you really don't think about until something changes, that if you proactively sort of get involved, it would be such a relief. God forbid something bad should happen. And, I kind of finalize when I work with people in that way. I was like, at a minimum, we're going to make a list of all the account numbers, all the passwords, everything we need to know about the other person. And then we're going to put it with your will. And, as soon as something like a life event happens, at least they have access to that information, which should make it a lot easier. And a lot of people are, getting on board for that kind of concept too.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just being prepared for these things is kind of a little piece of the whole picture that we're always stressing that people should get ahead.
Yes.
with planning for their financial future, with making sure they have the proper coverages in place for their health and their life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just seems like it's another piece of that puzzle to help make things easier.
Yeah, and when I do a presentation, I kind of break things. I literally write on the whiteboard. I put 100%, and I break it down in quarters. And I say 25% of people after a life event or anything are pretty well set. They did their trusts, they did their planning, they did their estate planning. They're good. Someone dies, the machine goes into motion. Really don't work with them. Another 25% of people, they get involved. Mm-hmm. It's kind of therapeutic. They want to work through this problem. They want to touch everything. They want to look at the accounts. It helps them get through get through the morning almost. I sort of help them, because they need some help sometimes. So that's kind of 50%. Then there's another 25% of people, they become an executor. They just don't have the time. They're working full time. They got kids. There's sporting events. There's another parent they're caring for. They want to do it. They just can't do it.
Yeah.
I have an example of a client of mine. He called me up, owns a waterproofing company in New Haven. Calls me up. He's like, oh, my father died. He founded the company. I'm running the company. He's got a couple accounts. I just need to get these things taken care of. Like, not a big deal. Give me the death certificate of your dad. I look at it, and the father died 9 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So these two accounts were like TD Ameritrade accounts. Are about $3,000. The company deals with contracts that are $50, $100, $100,000. He's like, I just don't have time to deal with this. So I was just like, all right, give me the death certificate. We called TD. We had to send in this, declare a moment in the company where the transition of power occurred, write some notes down, send it in. And it took about 2 weeks where this guy was, dealing with it for about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So those kind of people I help out a ton. Yeah. And then the last group, the last 25% are kind of the deer in the headlights group. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what an executorship is. They don't know what beneficiaries are. We had a case from Fidelity. He was a senior engineer at the nuclear submarine plant. Very, very, alpha male guy. huge guy, senior engineer. He was worth about $6 million, and he had a lot of stock certificates, Microsoft stock certificates, Amazon, and he dies, and his wife knew nothing. She didn't even know what a stock certificate was. It took months and months and months to get her organized. But those are the groups. That group of people like that are extremely grateful. And it's red tape. It's all administrative. There's really nothing legal unless someone's contesting the will or someone's claiming that's theirs. And, that's when the lawyers get involved. But if it's a straightforward situation, just a lot of mailing, a lot of notaries, and, just a lot of red tape.
That's great. I'm looking at your website now, and I mean, it's very clear and clean, and it makes a whole lot of sense. It looks like it outlines the pricing and the services. So when somebody reaches out to you, it's a free consultation, correct?
Yeah. Because like I said, sometimes they're looking for help where it doesn't fit my service. I had a couple call up once. Hey, we live in a house now. This used to be my wife's parents. They died, 10 years ago. They're still on the deed. Can you help? No. Go call your attorney.
Right.
And, get that sort of figured out. That's there's some nuances involved in that. But like if they call up and they're just, like I just explained, my wife just passed away. She has, 403B. There's 2 401ks. I don't know where to go with this.
Yeah.
Yes, of course I can help. Let's get this done. And if it's a probate situation, and the person gets excited and, assigned as executor, they have to do a lot of paperwork too. And I consult with them also to kind of get through that red tape.
That's great. And do you find yourself working with the financial advisor in some of those cases as well?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah, I have a case right now. Father dies. Daughter is the executor. Father was pretty well organized. Had a lot of accounts. He actually worked with a financial advisor, but he had a lot of minuscule accounts, a lot of little small accounts that were sort of lingering around. The financial advisor called me. He's like, listen, I'm handling these group of accounts where there's a lot of money movement, a lot of money going into the beneficiaries. But he goes, there's about a half a dozen small accounts I don't even want to deal with. Can you handle it? Yeah. I'm like, absolutely. So I called up the executor. She was completely on board. She's like, I don't want to deal with this stuff. So I just went through all those accounts one by one, got the money transferred over to the estate account, closed that account, closed the account, and just sort of, got some, there was a completion moment, when we finally figured everything out and wrapped things up.
That's awesome. Do you touch upon any like social media accounts that people have created?
It's a good point because I've been concentrating on financial accounts, but my expertise, if I can say that, does span every account. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, if there's Facebook accounts, Netflix accounts, all in the name of the deceased, I give an example. There was a client I was working with, and, I was working with their son, and they were moving the mother out of the house, downsizing her. And they're like, they had to turn off all the bills and everything. They finally got the electric bill, and it was still in the name of the dad. And the dad died about 12 years ago.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? It's not the end of that happens a lot, but it was another step or two that we had to sort of deal with. And a lot of people do that. They kind of keep that person's name on the Netflix accounts, on the UI bill, on this account, on that account. But when things change, you got to sort of deal with those. And sometimes it's a little bit of a headache, and it could be overwhelming for people that aren't ready to deal with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that. With Facebook and Instagram accounts for people who pass away, what happens to them? I can assume
you can close them out. You can close them out. A lot of people don't. You know what I mean? There's kind of this remembrance of that person. I had a close friend who passed away about 4 years ago, and his Facebook account's still there. It's a little creepy. But
right,
it's kind of like his last input, his last statement on Facebook, and he was gone a week later.
Yeah, so
so it's but it's a little therapeutic for the wife. She likes to visit it, I guess. So to each their own.
So for you, it's never really a bad time for somebody to reach out if they're thinking about these things, because you can do that kind of initial consultation. You can decide on whether or not you're the right fit for them, and then you can develop a plan for what they need.
Exactly. And it could be, months after someone has passed away. It could be years after someone has passed away. Because there's a lot of loose ends that never really get resolved that aren't really, detrimental to the family or the estate, but people want to wrap things up. Someone, they asked me, when should I get all this sort of figured out? I was like, it's always good to kind of wrap things up before the next tax year, because, when it comes to the next tax year, the estate is an entity and it pays its own taxes. It's the accountant's going to want to know what's going on.
Right.
So I kind of say, we should kind of get everything closed by that time. So when you do when you speak to your accountant and they're dealing with the estate side of things, we can sort of say, hey, this was done, this was done, this is done. And you don't have to get an extension. You don't have to deal with these loose ends. So
right.
I kind of give that perspective.
That makes sense. So get it done before you have to go in and file your taxes for the following year.
Yeah. So you have that sort of time span, and it's not going to be the end of the world if it goes beyond that.
Of course.
But it just sort of lingers and lingers and lingers. And before you know, you're dealing with situations you didn't have to deal with before. So I always try to say, just wrap it up sooner the better to kind of get closure too, to kind of put it away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a tough time for people to have to think about all of these things in addition to it. I'm sure they appreciate that assistance and that help. So
yes.
We touched a little bit upon the fact that you're doing well with the business. It's growing and you might need help soon. Do you have a kind of a goal, or where do you see it going? What would you like to do with it in the future?
Small business owners, you have that big goal of how do I want this company to be? I'll be frank with you. I think this service is needed everywhere. Yeah. You know what I mean? Every state has their own nuances, has their own little rules and ways of doing things. But, if this thing can catch fire, I would like to spread it, all over the place. I'm sort of building the foundation now. I sort of want to get my processes in place, and then, I'll take it up a notch when I want to start moving forward with it. But I do think there's some major room for expansion. I just got to work out some of the details, but I think this thing can go from Connecticut to California and everywhere in between. As long as there's a good process in place and everyone understands that this is not a legal situation, it's purely administrative. That's one of the things that when people ask me, can you do some work in Massachusetts? Can you do work in New York? I'm like, absolutely, because I am not giving you legal advice and or financial advice.
Right.
I'm going to handle your paperwork, and that's about it. Like different paperwork, different states, but it's still paperwork. Yeah. And that's what it boils down to.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So for you, are there certain things as you have your family, you're balancing this new business, it's growing, which is fantastic. Are there things that you have, any practices that you have to help to kind of maintain your own health or to stay healthy?
Yeah. Since the pandemic, a couple things I put into place. I was like, I got to keep physically fit somehow. I'm a little older than I look. I'm actually 54. One of those things, get on the treadmill at least 3 times a week. Pay attention to the kids. They're only young once. That's a huge thing that I want to do. Cut down on the drinking a little bit. Not that I was a heavy drinker, but a little too much wine during the pandemic years. So those sort of things.
You and everyone else in the world.
I know liquor stores were booming during those few years when we were all sitting at home. But those simple things. Health, family. And pay attention to things that are meaningful and simple. Because time just flies by. You know what I mean? Dealing with families. Some of these people that I deal with. The deceased, they're not that much older than I am. They're in their early 60s, late 50s. Some are even younger than me, and I'm just like, geez. So I try to really focus on those important things, the little things that really matter as I'm going forward with this.
That's great. I think that's important, and it's a good reminder for people to kind of have that balance in their lives, and to stay healthy. Make sure you have those practices.
Yeah, definitely.
So your business, there's a website for it. What is the best way for someone to find you and to reach out to you? And also, when do you encourage them to do that?
Yeah, they can reach out. The website is www.transferencellc.com. There's a way to contact me via the website. I take text messages, phone calls or emails any time of the day or night. Doesn't make a difference. I always respond back. The website itself, once you get on, there's a little link on there that if you put your email, will actually give you a PDF of what to expect after someone dies or what to pay attention to. It's a little overwhelming, the list, but I did that on purpose just to kind of give people a heads up of kind of what you really need to pay attention to. Once they enter their email, I'll get a heads up on that, that, hey, they're sort of interested in this process, so I can reach out to them that way. But any form of communication, email, text, or call is the best way to get a hold of me any time of the day or night.
That's great. I was on the website this morning, and I did put my email in there to see what.
Yeah, I did see that. I was like, oh, a new one. Oh, that's like, oh, that's David.
It's just me. But it's good for me too. I mean, in my business, I'm meeting a lot of people, unfortunately, that are dealing with this process. So it's good for me to know what your services are as well, so that I can talk to people about that.
One aspect of my service that I didn't bring up that I want to talk about now for a second is that I'm talking about before someone passes away, then after someone passes away. But I've been getting a lot of calls when a person is power of attorney. Now, power of attorney is an interesting position because you need to get the lawyer to get you assigned the power of attorney. What I've been finding out is a lot of times the attorneys don't really explain what the power of attorney is actually supposed to be doing. So I had an example of a client where her husband was in hospice. Her daughter called me up and said, my mother is a power of attorney for my stepdad. I'm not sure if everything's organized correctly. So I called the mom. She's power of attorney. She did great. But I said, ma'am, your husband, he's unfortunately in the spot. Where are his accounts? How are they registered? Just let me see. And so she got me the statements, and, she had power of attorney over the accounts, but not all the beneficiaries were updated accordingly. She had power of attorney over one account. There was no beneficiary, and I was like, listen, you have this control over the account now, but when he passes, you lose that power of attorney. So it'll be a good time for to update, to get these things correctly. Refer to your estate attorney if you need to sort of find out how you want this thing planned or not, but you need to get on top of the beneficiaries and make sure they're updated correctly now that you have this power and he's on the brink of death. So we actually went through those steps. She added herself as, the transfer on death on his individual accounts. For the joint accounts that she wasn't added on, for the IRAs, she was primary beneficiary. We got everything organized correctly based on our power of attorney. And, he passed away about 3 weeks later, but everything transitioned very smoothly after that. She avoided the whole probate mess. So that's something I work well with also when it comes to those situations. So it's kind of like pre-death, power of attorney scenarios, post-death is where I can really be utilized the most.
Okay, that's great to know. I mean, I'm sure that happens a lot for people, and they don't realize that maybe there's a hole in the plan that they have created.
Yeah. And if you can skip the whole probate scenario, it is so drawn out, and all you really need to do is just fill out a form, hand it in, make sure it's in place, and then everything should be fine. And after that, it's literally just handing in the death certificate and just sort of going through the steps of passing the money to the beneficiary, which is an easy process. Beneficiaries avoid probate.
Right. Gotcha.
If anyone didn't know that.
Yep. That's great. Well, Ed, this has been a really great conversation. I'm so happy that we got to do it and to learn more about Transferance. I do recommend that people go to transferencellc.com. We will put all of this information in the post. Check out what Ed is doing for people. And if you need his services, be sure to reach out. There is that free consultation. You'll be able to talk to him about what your needs are, and he'll be able to design a plan if he is the right person to help you. Also, if you guys are here listening for Ed, make sure you go back and listen to Sounds of Health. We've had some really great episodes, some amazing guests, and they're all about people that are making the world a better place and finding ways to help others to increase their emotional, physical, and financial health. So if you're here for Ed, take some time to go and subscribe to Sounds of Health. Listen to the podcast, leave a review. We appreciate all that support and for you all helping us to spread these sounds. Ed, any closing thoughts before I let you go?
No, David, I think it's a great thing you're doing here. It's very informative. People need to know the stuff that you're involved in. Hopefully they're interested in the stuff I'm involved in. So I completely support this. So great job doing this.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you and getting to know this amazing service that you're providing to people. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll have you back maybe next season.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Sounds of Health is brought to you by Nutmeg Insurance Advisors and recorded at the offices of Nutmeg Advisory Group. The podcast is produced by Jason Carubia and Dave MacNiven with music by Rob Hames. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your support means a lot to us, and we appreciate it when you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you know someone who you think should be a guest on the show, please email us at SoundsofHealthPodcast@gmail.com. Each week, we help you move the needle toward better health by spotlighting the stories, people, and resources that inspire and motivate others, and we are just getting started. Help us share these sounds, and don't keep us a secret.